NASA, never a straight answer. The lie is different at every level.
And you know, because you've got secret documents that say it's out there, that they're going to run into artifacts, ETs, old libraries, you know, generators, spaceships, God knows what. And you don't want to tell the people that that's what you're really looking for. Then you will create in law an agency which only can let them know what you want them to know and keep all the good stuff secret.
And their paper, published in Nature, which is the preeminent scientific journal of planet Earth, announced in October of 1989 that Phobos had to be at least 1/3 hollow. And remember, the real prize was the ancient artifacts of an extraordinary civilization waiting to be found and brought home and looted by Apollo on the moon. NASA and the Nazis in NASA, they believe they're the Martians. They want to go home. There is an incredible planet of ruins left by someone that these guys, the Nazis, feel that they are the only appropriate sole rightful heirs apparent to, and we don't count.
When the Nazis took their incredibly sophisticated experiments in hyperdimensional physics and torsion and took it off and did something with it for the last 60+ years, they could have created a completely independent parallel civilization. And they could be the ones basically saying to all the rest of us, you're going to stay there, we're going to stay out here. 9/11 may not be anything like we have been thinking.
I was told that they would rather give up a major American city, Perin, to nuclear terrorism than give up this physics. And the physics is the physics of anti-gravity, so-called free energy, even consciousness and life itself.
The ideology still is there, it still exists. These were true believers. They didn't give up just because they lost the war. These were Nazis. These were dyed-in-the-wool believers, true believers. So when they fled over the rat lines, they took their beliefs with them. You know, they lost the war, but they won the peace. Since World War II, the amount of influence of Nazi ideology around the world has not decreased at all. I mean, if anything, it's increased. We may be looking at Argentina again, you know, as the location for the Bell. If the Bell did escape captivity, as it were, I believe that it, or its technology anyway, wound up somewhere in Latin America. The space program was largely, or the godchild, you might say, of the Nazi space program. We brought over Walter Dornberger and Wernher von Braun and hundreds of other Nazi scientists of them to work on our space program at a time before NASA was created. We were developing this technology using Nazi scientists. And what happened? The infamous Roswell crash, that some of the debris from that crash was taken to Wright-Patterson, and Wright-Patterson is where our Nazi scientists were located. They had just moved to Wright-Patterson in the same week as the debris was brought over from Roswell to Ohio to Wright-Patterson. So we have this bizarre Nazi influence in the space program and in the UFO program attached to the space program.
And I began to realize that the Nazi Party was not a political party, the way we understand political parties, but that the Nazi Party was a cult. And if you look at it from that point of view, you can understand the true nature of this kind of evil, because the Nazi Party they're not going to go away simply because they lost the war.
And then we have the assassination of the president, who's now throwing all this money behind an attempt to go to the moon, and who's funneling all sorts of cash into NASA, but who was at the same time considered to be weak on communism. Now, the biggest enemy to the Nazis were the communists. Perhaps that's the connection that we've missed. There might have been a deeper, darker motive behind this. People who worked with Lee Harvey Oswald at Riley Coffee eventually all found jobs with NASA or with NASA-related industries in the space program. I mean, these are people who were just clerks.
At some point, I firmly believe this secret's going to break. I think it's inevitable. Something unexpected is going to happen.
It's going to be a bumpy ride. And nevertheless, it will happen. They can't stop this. You can't stop history. The pace of change is so rapid, it's so revolutionary. It will not be stopped. How do you pay for the research? How do you really do all of it? Well, you've got to have secret money. I'm now convinced that the UFO secret is one of the foundational elements of the so-called black budget, because it's a secret that was so big and is so big, to fund it is a lot of money. What we call the black world, existing as it does with essentially infinite amount of money to play with for all intents and purposes. What are all these secret programs about? Is there a secret space program? That might be a tough one for the president or any other responsible agency to discuss. Yeah, we actually are going off-world, people, and we've been going to the Mars and Moon for X number of years. You know, a lot of people might be a little upset about that. This gentleman, of course, I think is well known to most residents of the UK, Gary McKinnon. You know, guy hacking into U.S. Space Command site looking for UFOs. Okay, this guy says that he found a list of officer names under the heading of non-terrestrial officers. Well, that's rather interesting.
The basic point is we've retrieved exotic technologies. They have to be kept secret. We've got secret budgetary appropriations, that is a black budget, and then the privatization of that secret. So what does that lead to? What you're seeing is a separate civilization, a civilization that is broken off of our own, a breakaway civilization.
And there's going to be a time in which something happens, in which the powers that be are forced to disclose in order to try to maintain control of the spin.
If we were all part of a team with exotic technology to study, a near infinite amount of money to play with, and total secrecy, not just for years, not just for decades, but for generations, what could we come up with? Anti-gravity, field propulsion technology, for instance. All right? If you share that with the world, as I'm going to get into in the next section, you're going to create some serious problems, potentially.
There is a conflict situation. The conflict started, in my opinion, shortly after the Second World War, and we shot several of these things down.
First of all, we're not just, when you talk about aliens coming here, we're not talking about one group. I know from my own connections that it's accepted by some governments that up to 50 or more species have been coming here over the years, and that's not so outrageous. Essentially, they're all humanoid, but there are variations.
There is a very serious conflict, not just with these beings, but maybe some others as well. But the good news is that we do have some allies. Many of these races are located undersea in huge undersea bases and have been for a very long time. In fact, I think they are our progenitors. They've been here on planet Earth for longer than we have. President Gorbachev confirmed that at the Geneva summit in 1985, he and President Reagan agreed that the Soviet Union and the United States would collaborate in the event of an extraterrestrial attack. That is officially confirmed. There is a liaison program involving a few military and scientific intelligence personnel who liaise with a certain group of ETs.
Also, from a friend of mine, a former lady who worked in MI6, she met Neil Armstrong. She'd overheard a conversation of him talking to a German doctor at a NASA conference, and then she confronted Armstrong with this information, and he admitted, yes, there were craft on the moon when they landed, and they were very frightened by it, and they felt threatened.